So this federal funds rate, is it a peak? If you think it's the peak, then fine, go and buy tech stock. If you think the US inflation rate has peaked, go ahead. And it's going to come down, go ahead. So we're joining live. So who's going to announce we're joining live? Never mind, just to make sure. I'll continue, right? So now we're joining with the audience for a short while, 15-20 minutes on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, which we have every Saturday, where we talk about all kinds of stuff, right? If you want, follow us every Saturday, 11 o'clock. Last week, we had it live from Hong Kong, Times Square. Next. So this is the U curve. This is another indicator that's very useful for recession prediction. This is an inverted U curve, whereby the short-term interest rates are higher than the long-term interest rate. That's why it's called inversion, right? Normal one would be short-term interest rates lower than the longer term. This is normal shape. This is inversion. This recession is among the many ones, and it's extremely reliable. It's been telling you there's going to be a recession, there's going to be a recession for quite some time. I'm very convinced. I'm not just seeing a recession in US in 2023. I'm seeing a serious recession in US in 2023. A serious one, not a mild one. Next. Okay, Silicon Valley Bank, just very quickly. It is, very, in case those of you who are wondering what happened, there are two types of assets in a bank's balance sheet. One is held to maturity, HTM, or available for sale, right? Now, this Silicon Valley Bank is a bank that caters mainly to the tech sector, whether it's biotech or infotech in the US and in many countries in the world, including UK, Singapore, and so on. So they are like the Chetia of the tech sector. Those of you who do not know what Chetia is, I think the younger ones have not heard of the word Chetia, right? Chetia is Indian money lender from a long time ago. Right? They are very good people, very warm-hearted people. It's just that you have to pay them high interest rate. So Silicon Valley Bank is the Chetty of the tech sector. And during the pandemic, a lot of the startups did very well. They raised, you see all the tech IPOs raised a lot of money. A lot of money flooded in. Don't know where to put, so a lot of them put in the money as deposit at the Silicon Valley Bank. And then they don't need to borrow from Silicon Valley Bank. So what I got 200 billion worth of deposit. What do? This management is really, they should be in jail. They went to put them at a time when America was still having a zero interest rate policy. Invested a big chunk of it in government bonds. Nothing wrong. If you're going to hold the government bonds, let's say if you buy a 10-year, 30-year government bond, you can hold until to maturity, then you won't lose money because you get back the principal, right? But unfortunately, life is never so simple, especially when you move from zero interest rate to 5% interest rate in less than one and a half years. So when the Federal Reserve started to tighten, what happens to the prices of the bonds? The prices of the bonds all plunge because bond price is opposite of interest rate. Interest rate goes up, bond price goes down. Interest rate goes down, bond price goes up. If a 30-year bond, if the interest rate, the bond yield of a 30-year bond goes up by 2%, the price of the 30-year bond will plunge by 32%. That's how sensitive they are. So this Silicon Valley Bank, they've been around for quite some time, but most of them there. And then some of the depositors wanted to withdraw the money, right? And Silicon Valley Bank had to choose between selling HTM or available for sale. If they sell this, if you hold this until maturity, like I said, it doesn't impact your P&L and balance sheet. But because now people are asking for deposit, so they have to decide between which to sell. They cannot touch this because the losses are big. So they sold this, about 21 billion worth of it, and they lost 1.8 billion US dollars. And they try to raise new capital to cover up for the losses. So when the market heard that Silicon Valley Bank lost 1.8 and is trying to raise new capital, then because their depositors are not ordinary naive people like us. They are the tech-savvy people like Peter Thiel who launched PayPal. These are the depositors. When they heard that, this is the first bank run that's created by Twitter. The first bank run that is caused by social media. They started tweeting one another. Withdraw your money, withdraw your money. So everybody started withdrawing their money. By, what day was it next? On Thursday alone, right, clients withdrew 42 billion in deposits. And SVB share price crashed 60% in one day. So by the next day, the company sudah kaput. The Federal Deposit Insurance Company took over already. One day. This is, it's so interesting. I hope they make a Hollywood movie, how a bank run is caused by social media and Twitter. So if you want to cause a bank run in Malaysia, please, I hope you don't do that. You're going to say, Maybank. Thanks. And look, when I say European regulators are unhappy, I'm not inventing it, it's from Financial Times, A senior Eurozone official described their shock at the total and utter incompetence of US authorities, particularly after a decade and a half of long and boring meetings with Americans advocating an end to bailout, and immediately they bail out their Silicon Valley Bank. Right? This is America for you, the leader of the free world. A former senior UK policymaker who helped negotiate global standards for bank resolution, described the handling of the SVB as a disaster. So this is the US banking crisis. The 2023 US banking crisis is not caused by Silicon Valley, not caused by the Silicon Valley Bank. It is caused by the belated but very aggressive monetary tightening, which was in turn caused by the careless fiscal spending of Trump and Biden, which caused the US economy to overheat and erupt like a volcano. Despite the aggressive tightening, the inflation lava is still flowing thick and thin, causing economic and financial destruction along its hot molten path. Nice, son. Right, written by me. So at the end of it, it all boils down to US inflation and where it's heading in the coming months. For the Federal Reserve, I describe it as the situation they're in is, damn if you do, damn if you don't. If you don't do it, you're damn. If you do it, you're damn. If you don't tighten, also you're stupid. If you tighten, you're so stupid. That is the dilemma they're in. And for them to raise the federal funds rate to cool down inflation, that was really very difficult, right? But now they have to do it so much that it doesn't cause a recession, and with the current banking crisis, it's even more difficult. Thanks. These are some of the mid-sized and regional banks, right? First Republic is still here. US Bangkok, these are not small, these are not your tiny fat bank, no, these are 675 billion, no. Right? Bank of America is about 3 over trillion. Right? JP Morgan is about 4 trillion. So this is, if you combine KeyCorp, Charles Schwab, which is mid-size, Trice, right? If you combine a lot of this one, they can be as big as JP Morgan and Citigroup. And then you are having a real banking crisis. Next. So many have compared the current banking crisis with the 2008 Lehman Brothers. The two banking crises are different. They got different underlying cause, they have different impact, and they require different solution. Lehman Brothers was a credit risk default crisis. Silicon Valley is an interest rate risk crisis, is a liquidity crisis caused by different factors. Lehman Brothers one was where people defaulted, can't pay you, that's it, you know. Here, it's not that. It's because I'm forced to sell my assets at losses, right, which led to liquidity risk. So the same set of factors are affecting the mid-sized and regional banks. The Credit Suisse is different. Over in Europe, Credit Suisse is a long history where it's been having a lot of crises on its own. But it so happens that it coincided at the same time. It happened at the same time. Like they say, you know, when it rains, it doesn't rain, but when it rains, it pours. Right? Next. These are the US financial institution, the top 15 one, where their deposits, to show you the percentage of deposit not insured by the FDIC. Citigroup. So those of you who got 3 million in Citigroup, please move it to, I don't know which bank. JP Morgan 59, BNY, these are the big banks. Right? And the black one are the mid-size and regional. So a lot of them don't have enough insured deposits. Next. This is what I wrote in case you all don't take the trouble to go and read what I write in 2015, where we said that based on all objective considerations, the Federal Reserve is way behind in increasing the federal funds target rate. Value investors look for safety margin. The US Federal Reserve under Janet Yellen is playing with danger. And in fact, American politician Ron Paul has been pushing hard for audit the Fed legislation. He said that over a century, the Federal Reserve has operated in secrecy to the benefit of the elites and detriment of the ordinary people. It is time to finally bring transparency to monetary policy by auditing the Federal Reserve, because you don't really know what is happening. There's no disclosure. And at that time, we already wrote, I'm convinced that the next capital letter, bear market, will be caused by the US Federal Reserve blundering again. That's why in 2015, 2016, for our International Value Fund, we have 80% cash. For our International Global Fund, we have 80% cash. Next. Okay, I'm showing this as a back to the future kind of lesson. This is 1972-73. US inflation went crazy to almost 12%. This was, maybe you can blame it on the first oil crisis, right? Where OPEC embargoed oil. Then it came down about 11% to about 6%. And then started to go up again. Can this happen again? Why not? This is what is stagflation. So the scenario I'm seeing for US, I don't know, in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, is stagflation, where they cannot bring down, because of the banking crisis now, they cannot tighten further, and therefore this inflation volcano keeps erupting. Right? But it comes to a point where you cannot ignore inflation, because now you got two things to decide. Do you take care of a banking crisis, or do you take care of the inflation? So far, the banking crisis seems to be still contained with the mid-size and the regional banks. But then, how can you explain Deutsche Bank? Why did Deutsche Bank suddenly plunge? Well, the reason is the credit default swap, the CDS, shot up like crazy. And people, the CDS, when the CDS price goes up like crazy, is telling you something is happening to that bank. Right? Because the CDS is an insurance of the bonds. In this case, it was the 5-year bond of Deutsche Bank. But why are people suddenly frightened? Deutsche Bank is the largest bank in Europe, and this is just after Credit Suisse. So are we seeing something, It's like when you see one cockroach, you can be sure there are a lot of other cockroaches around. No? Cry or not, right? You can bring your Baygon, spray, and suddenly you see so many coming out. So, and by all measures, Deutsche Bank has got very strong financial parameters? I don't know. I have no answer. All I'm saying is, as a value investor, not only am I kiasu, not only am I cheapskate, I always think of the worst. I don't worry about them. I think of the worst and be prepared for it. Right? So, can we see a reacceleration of US inflation? That is more worrying than the banking crisis, the current regional banking crisis. It's more worrying because it has to force the central bank, the American Monetary Federal Reserve, to start tightening again when they're not supposed to. Which means what? You're going to have a recession which is going to be very serious. Thanks. Yeah. Oh, you do guerrilla attack. Oh, you want to attack me then?
Okay, so now I will go through the application procedure for our iCapital China Fund. So step 1, read the funds document carefully. Visit our website www.capitaldynamic.hk and go to the iCapital China Fund sections and click on the funds document. Step 2, complete the account opening pack. You are required to fill out 5 forms. The first is Master Account Opening Form. Second, Common Reporting Standard CRS Form. Third, Investor Profile Questionnaire Form. Fourth, WA Bank Form. And the last one is the Risk Disclosure Statement. Step 3, submit your applications. You can choose to submit your application in person by visiting our office. The second method, you can mail in to us. Please take note, if you choose to mail in your application, you need to get a third party to certify the original documents and witness your signature. Besides that, you are also required to provide us your certified true copy of your IC and a valid passport or driving license with photograph. In addition, address proof is needed if the address stated in your master account opening form is different from the address stated in your IC and passport or driving license. Step 4, the last step, transfer your subscription money. Please take note, all the subscription money must be originated from a bank account held by you, and in the case of joint account, from a joint bank account held by the same joint holder. We do not accept cash or third-party payment. For the payment method, you can choose to transfer your money by telegraphic transfer or online telegraphic transfer. For those who have a bank account in Hong Kong, you can choose to transfer your money by check or by RTGS. Once you have transferred your funds, you are required to email to us your payment proof at enquiries@capitaldynamic.hk or in person. That's all for my part. I will pass back to Teng Bu.
Thanks, Jinping. Okay, this is the part which is more difficult but very important. And some of you might have heard some parts of it before. For those of you who have, please bear with me. And if you find the aircon is too hot, too cold, please raise your hand. So, why do I put my title not as China's economic outlook? Why do I put my title as China under Xi Jinping? I think from what I can gather in a very informal way is that if you read the Western media and listen to them, it's like as if Xi Jinping is creating the next disaster for China. That Xi Jinping should be removed. I mean, they don't say it so clearly, but what Biden and America wants to do is for regime change in China. So it's like as if you have a dictator who is going to be the most powerful person in China, and now who is leading a country that is in almost every sense of the word as strong as America. So if you were to tell people, I mean, here maybe you are not having that mindset because you're listening to why invest in Chinese stocks. But you can talk to other people and say, are you crazy? You're investing in a country that's going back to the Maoist era, the era of Mao Zedong. So that's why I spent a bit of time to try to explain what Xi Jinping is trying to do, what his thinking is, and what does it mean for China. Because it's linked with the economic prospects, economic future of China. Next. They always tell you, I mean, which is true, which is what Deng Xiaoping always said, and Xi Jinping, we got socialism with Chinese characteristics. But when the media, especially the Western media, when they do their reporting, not just the Western media, even our local English media or even the English media in Singapore, they ignore this part. They only focus on this. Oh, and then they say they're going back to Maoist era. Right? Or what about capitalism with Chinese characteristics? This one is my own invention. Right? And how can you call the country communist within inverted commas when it has got the most capitalistic structure? Next. Okay, for some of you who are not Chinese, just to explain to you the Chinese language, and by way of disclosure, I cannot read Chinese, I cannot speak Chinese. This is not written by me. My staff helped me. But the Chinese language is interesting. English, you can only write left to right. Right? Celebrating 50th anniversary Australia-China relation. You cannot write the other way. It doesn't make sense anymore. Correct? But Chinese doesn't matter one, no. Left to right, right to left is okay. Or you can make, hey. Shh. Don't frighten me, you know. You can write this way, right? This way, but English language you can't. That's why English, it reflects a mindset which is very rigid, very ideological. Whereas the Chinese, it's okay. Cannot settle differences, never mind, let's sit down and talk. Talk cannot settle, never mind, we talk again. So the Chinese mindset is very pragmatic, not ideological. Like I told my Western friends, do you know China is so open-minded? You call them the Communist Party of China, whatever name you want to use. How did China learn and progress? China learned from two Westerners. Do you know who they are? Karl Marx. Yeah, Marxism he's German. And then Adam Smith. China learned from two Westerners and incorporated into their economy and society and successfully reformed. So I asked my Western friends, your country is going down the drain, and I give you a frank advice that the way for you to reform is to adopt the Confucianist philosophy. Would you ever do it? Cannot. That's how ideological, close-minded they are. But to the Chinese, like I show you this one here, it's so pragmatic. You want to write this year, it's okay, this year it's okay, never mind. I got the context, I can understand you. Cukup. Next. And we got calligraphy. We can write in calligraphy. And calligraphy is not, maybe in Malaysia not so popular, but in China it's still very respected. It's still very highly respected as characteristics of a gentleman, of a civilized person, of a superior person. Next. In the history of China, this is the Chinese characteristics part. If my Mandarin pronunciation is not so chun, please don't laugh at me. Liu Yi, correct or not? Yes. Oh, thank you. I practiced so long, no? This is the 6 arts, where a long time ago, the Chinese people were required to master these 6 skills. Correct? And then here, right, I cannot read for you, sorry. So once you're able to master this state of perfection, then you become a gentleman. Right? But in the Chinese word, gentleman is not gentleman. You know, English gentleman, the man must be gentle, no? That's what gentleman means, right? But they never have gentlewoman, correct? So that means the man is very brutal, very violent. That's why the opposite is a gentleman, right? But Chinese doesn't have that. So these 6 arts later became part of the Confucian philosophy. And it's been passed down generation and generation. It is still in the mind of Xi Jinping. Next. After that is 这个是三什么我不知道。 Sanjay, okay, thank you. The three perfections, they forgot to put in the Hanyi pinyin for me. So this one is, we got to know how to do poetry, painting, and calligraphy. Right? And do you realize, I mean, it took me a long time to realize that Chinese painting is the only painting in the world where you got a painting and then you got a poetry next to it. You look at Mona Lisa, right? Which is, actually I went to Paris, Mona Lisa is only about this size only. So small, and then you see all the stupid people queuing up to look at it. And then you got this wonderful painting here, which has got poem written in calligraphy. And it is so respected that even the emperor has to learn how to do it. Now, this is Chinese characteristics. Xi Jinping, has he got it? I guarantee you he does. I hope to see his calligraphy, even though I don't know how to read. Next. This is my name. Nice, huh? Right, not written by me. This one is maybe Chat GPT or what. So, I mean, many of you I don't have to explain, but just for those who are our friends who are non-Chinese, right? It took me a long time. Because when I go to the West, they'll send me an email, Mr. Teng, Mr. Bhutan. Come on, man. And then I've told you, many of you, this story before. I got marketing emails from America from the Boo Society, BOO, Boo Society, which I like to be a member of the Boo Society. I say I'm not a Boo, So this is Chen Ting Wu, right? Ting, is the urn. And then I found out that there are many types of urn. The common man type, the ordinary people type, and up to the emperor level, the highest level. Wow, this person who's about 50 plus years old, when he explained to me, he's a graduate from Nanta. He said, Mr. Tan, your Ting is the emperor grade one. And what it means is that the Ting means person who is able to handle responsibility, correct? I mean, this is what I was told. And then Wu is the warrior. So that means that you combine these two, the meaning, he told me that Mr. Tan, your name is very unusual, but it's got a lot of heavy responsibility on you. So this is the Chinese characteristics. So please stop calling me Mr. Teng, Mr. Boo, Mr. whatever it is, because my name is Tan Teng Boo. But do the West understand it? Next. This is from Xi Jinping's book. He's got 4 volumes, 1, 2, 3, 4. The Governance of China, right? So he wrote, this was in 2014. He keeps referring to the ancient philosophy of Lao Tzu, Confucius, Mengzi, Zhuangzi, and all the Zi, right? In his speech. And in another place, this is in 2014 also, he also quoted Confucius again about the morality, about the ethical behavior. Next. And also 2014, this is where he quoted quite a lot of things. He's explaining the concept of harmony without uniformity. And he has to quote this Chinese historian about 2,500 years ago. Next. And then in 2016, right, shared prosperity is a primary goal of Marxism. It has also been a basic ideal of the Chinese people since ancient times, Confucius said. So it refers to Mencius and the Book of Rights. And he at the same time is able to quote Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. So there is socialism, there's Chinese characteristics. So why is it that the Western media only focus on this and not this? And you notice under Xi Jinping, he's been trying to promote the Chinese traditional dress, the hanfu, to popularize it again. Next. And our good friend, Mr. Xi Jinping, he's a very learned person. He reads the Russian literature, the Tolstoy, the Dostoevsky, Chekhov. For those of you who have not read Dostoevsky, these are all translated, in Chinese or English or whatever it is. I tried reading Dostoevsky 40 years ago. Oh, very hard to understand. But he's supposed to be a brilliant Russian novelist. Next. And what is China now? This is Anna Karenina. This is a famous novel by Leo Tolstoy, a Russian novelist before Russia became communist. And this is happening now. So this troop, this Russian Chinese troop, has been going around the cities of China showing the musical anacarena. They've gone to Shanghai, Xiamen, Beijing, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Zhuhai, Nanjing. I think you're looking at about maybe 100,000 people, Chinese, would have seen this display. This is a Russian classic. This is nothing to do with Marxism. And then how can a country that's so communist be able to produce some of the best musicians, classic Western music? I'm sure all of you have heard Lang Lang before, right? He is considered by many as one of the most accomplished classical musicians of modern time. So how does a communist country, which is supposed to be so communist, able to produce such fine arts, fine skills, civilized skills? Next. And more importantly, is he taking China back to Maoist era where only the public sector can have a role? This was a long time ago. He says we should make good use of the roles of both the market, the invisible hand, and the government, the visible hand. The market and government should complement and coordinate with each other to promote sustained and sound social and economic development. So particularly during the last 2 years when he kept emphasizing the importance of common prosperity, people thought that he was bringing China back to the visible hand where the government is going to take over everything, over the whole economy. That is wrong. Next. This is Xi Jinping's